keep this leg straight.
Right.
Bend this one up.
And just relax.
Just relax.
Okay.
Okay, get to, that's great, 126 degrees on the left side.
It's like at a chiropractor. You have to relax before the crunch.
No crunches today. Okay, and 128 degrees on the right side. Okay, so no restrictions to your flexibility. That looks great.
What's this testing?
This is testing your glute strength.
Okay, glute
So
strength.
bend your knee here.
Right, I've got my mind on my side. I'm going to bend my knee.
Okay,
and
ready?
and she's going to try and push down.
Oh, you're not stabilizing.
Okay.
Go ahead and hold that.
Right.
Ready, go. There we go. Okay, so need a little bit of work there, not horrible.
So it could be because of all the cycling that I've done, which has been my main activity.
Sure, but you've never actually focused on that strength.
What about yoga?
Sure, depending on the pose. This is called Thomas test.
Yep.
Slowly lower your leg down to the table, looking for tightness in the hip flexor,
Yep.
IT band, or rectus femoris, or part of your quad.
If it was tightness, what would it look like?
Tight quad,
Yeah.
your leg would be slightly straighter.
Right.
Tight hip flexor, you wouldn't be able to touch the table.
Yep.
Tight IT band, it would flop to the side when I put it down on the table.
Right.
So we're looking for all three of those things. Nothing wrong there. I'm going to lower both legs. You can go ahead and sit up. What we want to do is get the shoes and the saddle in the right place first. That's important. Then we come back and readjust the front end, meaning the handlebar position last, because how we affect the saddle will affect that cockpit position, and the handlebars need to adjust to make that correct. A lot of people make the mistake of moving their saddle forward or back to make that cockpit position more comfortable at the detriment of their knees or other lower extremity injuries. So that's why we want to start with the lower half first, then move to the top half. So initial impression is that that saddle, even though you said it was higher than usual, is probably still a little low. We're going to take some knee angle measurements as well as drop a plumb line, see if it's correct fore and aft as well. But initial impression is that the saddle's going to need to go up a little bit, as well as we're going to have to address the stance width factor as well. You're a very narrow woman, and the stance width of where you have to place your feet is much too wide, causing your knees to collapse in. Which can contribute to how that kneecap is tracking, and thus the pain of that you're experiencing in your knees. So we'll take a look at all of that, but probably a narrower bottom bracket or narrower pedal axle would be ideal to try to get those feet closer.
Now I guess that from a point of view of just bike equipment, there's probably a limit to how narrow you can go, what they make.
Right.
This is a petite bike Friday. It would be interesting, but it might actually be as narrow as you can buy.
Sure.
But we're gonna find that out, aren't we?
Yeah, so a lot of women do run into that problem, especially with mountain bikes. With the triple crank, you have a double crank, which is nice so that you're not overly wide there. But it is a problem that we run into in the bike industry, and there's only so much that we can do. So we'll try to exhaust those options today. But sometimes we simply can't get it narrow enough. Okay, so if you can see, ideally what we want is hip over knee over foot. So there's decent alignment from the hip to the knee, but those feet splay way out in order to get clipped into the pedals. So that's where we're running into the stance width issue. We need to get those feet closer together to get that ideal hip over knee over foot alignment. We'll take a look at measuring those knee angles, but the knee looks slightly too flexed, indicating the saddle's a little low. Upper body position's not bad. We're looking for a straight spine from the base of the sacrum at the bottom of her spine all the way to the top of her cervical spine, which she does. No major flexion points anywhere. Then we're also looking for a 90-degree angle if we bisect the torso and another line coming out to the wrist. That angle that's created right there at the armpit should be approximately 90 degrees, which we're achieving, and that neck should be in a nice neutral position, being able to look down the road comfortably, which she can, and the shoulder as well. We don't want to see it protracted or retracted in order to get to the bars, just sitting that scapula flat on the back. What we see from a rear view here is that Lynette gets quite a bit of rock in her hips. We're going to try to limit that. Too much rock in the hips can cause low back pain in particular. It can be a function of incorrect seat height more than likely, or the incorrect fitting saddle. If we look at the legs, you can see the stance width issue playing a major part. Lynette also has a right knee and lower leg that wants to abduct, but the current setup of her cleats is forcing that foot to point straight forward, which causes that right knee to point inwards. So we'll want to replicate her natural position that we found during the evaluation that both Andy Pruitt and myself did. In order, ideally we want, at 3 o'clock here, we want the plumb bob dropped from the end of the knee to line up with the end of the crank arm here.
And it does not.
Currently, she's about 2.5 to 3 centimeters behind that position, so the saddle needs to move forward that much. This is a goniometer to measure angles on the body specifically. So I just measured your knee flexion angle at the bottom of your pedal stroke. When we take this measurement statically, like we've just done with the goniometer, we want approximately 30 degrees of knee flexion, and that's what we have currently. So that's telling me that your seat height is appropriate. You check the other side to make sure it's symmetric from side to side, but as of right now, that seat height does not need to change.
So there's the goniometer measuring the angle, and how does that compare to the other side?
It's symmetric.
Oh, okay. So I've got something happening that's symmetrical in my life. So we're going to move the seat forward slightly.
Correct. Oh, that was tight.
We always wonder why saddles have to be so complicated, you know? They always seem to have this massive bolts and little bits, and, you know, they're so difficult to get your fingers in and around. You've got to have... What is that?
Easier and harder ones to maneuver.
But they must know what they're doing. Avery, how many of these bike fits have you done?
I currently do about 5 or 6 a week. I've been here at BCSM for about 2.5 years doing it. Unfortunately, there's not a perfect saddle out there for everybody. We have worked closely with Specialized to help develop some of their saddles. They've really taken a closer look at really more of the scientific approach on how to design a saddle, looking at pressure mapping, which we've helped them with, and so the saddle that's come out of that development tend to work for people. They come in different widths, tend to have a little bit flatter profile from front to back as well as from side to side. So we do like that, but if it's not comfortable, it doesn't work.
At the end of the day. So you could even get someone to bring in a Terry Chubby Cheeks, which is a gigantic thing that comes out here.
Right.
And that could still be okay. One day Lance might be riding one. You just wait. He's going to get old one day, right?
Right. For lack of a better name for it, we call this the assometer. Measured, you're going to sit on it, your sit bones are going to leave an impression here. We'll measure how far apart they are, and that'll correspond to the right width saddle.
Got it. Can't be any worse than the goniometer. Go on.